Good morning, everyone. I hate standing between you and your lunch, but bear with me. We're gonna embark on a very exciting journey. Today we're gonna cover three topics. The first one is the evolution of human language, and we're gonna see how did it become what it is today. The second topic is the evolution of artificial intelligence instead. So the key milestones that brought us to the stage where we are at today. And ultimately, we're going to put these two together and use artificial intelligence to measure human language in an automated way. So this is the first manifestation of human language. This is taken from a cave in France. The drawing, the painting, dates back to about 30,000 years ago. And from that point on, Homo sapiens developed a more and more complicated way of communicating, which brought us eventually to almost a start. So back to emojis, back to visual communication. So if we had to put this on a timeline, we have about 50,000 years ago, the cognitive revolution. So Homo sapiens starts developing a more sophisticated thought process that eventually leads to communication being developed and written communication. Now, the first examples of written scripts, so kind of abstract symbols, dates back to the Sumerian. And believe it or not, they were using it for accounting. So keeping track of the amount of barley and corn being traded. So it looks like we cannot get rid of accountants in space or time. They're always there. Which brings us to more recent form of languages. So this initial abstract scripts evolved to such a sophistication that we can write poetry, we can write treaties, we can express almost every concept in a written language. And brings us back to today. So that's instead the way we, most of the communication, especially the digital one, looks like today. And the interesting thing is the amount of data being produced, the amount of communication being done, has just grew exponentially. Which brings us now to artificial intelligence. So how can we program a machine to make sense and to extract meaning out of this type of communication? Let's see if I can get to the next slide. Perfect. So, well, you're in good hands. I spent all my adult life in artificial intelligence. You might be asking, why are you introducing yourself now? Well, I wanted the cave painting as a first slide. So, humble beginnings in a small Italian universities. They went on to the MIT of Europe, which is ETH Zurich in Switzerland, with a PhD funded by Google. And eventually in 2013, I co-founded a company, LogoGrab, with the mission of developing the best technology in detecting logos in pictures and videos. So back in my research days, we used to do pretty fancy things. For example, here is a system that we developed where I led this project, where a computer would sit in front of the TV, in this case YouTube, and learn very complicated objects, learn to recognize and detect very complex objects like birds, boats, cars, so on and so forth. So a very, very exciting project in the research community. Now, is this stuff mature enough for mass adoption? How are we in the roadmap of bringing cool research projects in everyday lives in artificial intelligence? And in order to answer that question, we can use a very popular model called the Gartner cycle, which in a way tries to explain from the moment in which a new technology hits the market, and you have this very rapid adoption because of the excitement, because people see this as the next revolution, and it's immediately followed by a terrible period of delusion and unmet expectations, only to finally reach maturity and productivity and mass adoption. Well, in the case of AI, more than a cycle has been a real roller coaster. So the technology itself and the idea of automating the thought process of humans have captured the attention early on after Second World War, of course, for defense reasons, but time and time again kept falling short in terms of expectations. So a lot of money that was poured into this research then was eventually lost because simply the results were not up to what people expected. Now, we are lucky enough to be living in a period of, we could call it a renaissance, because since the 90s, AI kept on delivering, and there hasn't been another AI winter since the 90s. A good example is, I really like this video. This is a very young Yann LeCun, which is currently the head of AI at Facebook. And he's demonstrating a video, this is back in '93, where this program would recognize digits. A very simple form of human communication. This program would be able to digitize what handwritten digits in a very robust way. So it's thanks to people like Yann LeCun that from the 90s on, we focused on very specific tasks for AI, and we were able to bring benefits to the market using AI. So the video we just showed basically sits there in this timeline. And from then on, things have been growing exponentially. In fact, the last data point on this chart is from 2012, and you see how things have progressed. But looking at this Bloomberg chart, 2012 is just a very, very small fraction of what is being invested today in AI. So booming market. Today, for example, at LogoGrab, we're able to do things like this, detecting commercial logos in very fast-moving footage, low-quality YouTube videos in a very robust and reliable way, so that there is value for brand managers and marketers around the world in using our technology. Now, when we set out on this mission of building the best logo recognition technology, we still didn't have an idea of what would be the right product to package it in so that enough people would have benefits. But then it hit us. So if today's communication, human communication, looks like this, then we should build this, which is a product that detects logos in social media imagery. In fact, we evolved the product quite a lot, and today our technology is able to tell you many, many things about a picture. So besides the presence of a logo, it can tell you the context, the presence of people, so on and so forth. So what this brings us to is a behavioral analysis tool where brand managers and social media managers around the world are able to understand the behavioral patterns of their users and get meaning out of the gigantic amount of data which is produced every day. More specifically, it's very hard to, I offered to censor this slide, but at the end I said, no, go with it. So it's very hard to kind of pinpoint what these people mean in their tweets without looking at the picture. Because in fact, a traditional text sentiment analysis would classify the first tweet as very, very negative. But in fact, it's just someone who is enjoying a beer. It so happens there is an important football match on the TV, but this person couldn't care less. It's just enjoying the beer. So for the brand manager responsible for that beer, well, that's actually a pretty positive message that is worth retweeting, probably fixing the English before doing that. Another example is this one. It's very hard to make anything out of the textual tweet until we look at what brand is inside, and apparently it tastes a lot like water. So this is just to stress the importance of visual communication today, which brings us, of course, to Kim Kardashian. I think that's the only reference to women I have in my talk. I'm sorry about that. Up to a few years ago, companies, brands poured money into brand ambassadorships, into brand endorser. Now, today's generation have very strong BS filters that are very hard to pass by. It's not enough to pay a celebrity to endorse your product to get through filters of millennials and even younger ones. So by having AI to recognize, to make meaning out of visual language allows you to find genuine endorsers. So people who are out there who are genuinely enjoying your product, and they so happens to be, for example, a foodie type of guy, which probably here is called hipster, I'm not sure. In Europe it's called foodie, which so happens to have a large fan base that you can leverage on to promote the genuine version of the brand endorser. And more in general, tools like this are very useful to measure ROI, so return on investment. How well am I doing compared to my competitors, given how much I invested in marketing? For example, in the world of licensing, this famous water brand invested significant amount of money to sponsor to use the rights from the Star Wars movie for specially designed bottle. And thanks to our tool, we were able to detect a significant increase in the share of voice, so in the presence of that brand in social media, which we were also able to track a significant increase in the sales of traditional products, the non-sponsored one, from the same bottle, from the same water brand. So in the moment you're able to make sense in an automated way of the gigantic trove of data online, you can do some pretty cool things. Another example is the Heineken Spectre sponsorship. So Heineken basically paid 1/3 of the bill to shoot the last James Bond movie for 2-second footage in which James Bond is drinking Heineken, but they chose LogoGrab as the technology to activate all the specially designed bottles, because it's almost like technology makes a brand look sophisticated. It's almost like if you want your brand to be a premium brand, then you also need to embrace the latest and the most premium technology. They almost go hand in hand in a world where traditional goods are the commodity, and choosing the right technology allows you to stand out of the crowd and really be perceived as a sophisticated and savvy brand. So, long story short, I would really like you to focus, given what we said about how human language evolved, how AI is evolving, to kind of think of the direction going forward. The future is mostly unwritten. And so when we think about the importance of text in digital communication and how it's now decreasing, visual is taking over, all the platforms out there very strongly focused on visual information. Kind of my advice for you is try to think what the next opportunity is. Try to think how this is going to evolve for the next stage, and what kind of technologies are needed to support this evolution and make sense, keep on extracting information from the gigantic amount of data that we as humans produce every day during our communications. This concludes my talk. If you want to shout out at me, that's my Twitter handle. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.